same with this, I would have never known. Like, what does a virgin look like? And what is Teddi doing? How is she presenting herself to not look like what a virgin looks like? And is this a positive or negative connotation in association with the word virginity? Like, it honestly says more about the person saying that sentence and saying that line as opposed to however you think the person who has this identity is or is not expressing themselves. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown. I'm Brianna, your Bachelor Relationship Analyst. Today we're going to be going over episode 6 of Clayton season. If you love getting into the nitty-gritty of the drama and the relationships, then this channel is for you. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we open up the episode with the 2-on-1 that we were left on a cliffhanger from last week between Genevieve and Shanae. You know, Clayton has his individual time with each girl. Genevieve is crying, and Shanae is talking about how Genevieve is an actress, and she was saying she wanted to go home and pack her bags the night before. Clearly, this is something that she made up in her mind, because Genevieve has not shown any signs of not being interested in Clayton or not wanting to be here to see if they do have a connection. But this was honestly one of those situations where it was like they had me in the first half, right? Because Shanae's over here, she's spinning her lies. I was like, whatever. But the thing is, Clayton usually falls for them, right? Like, he usually eats them up. He allows Shanae to tell whatever tale is on her mind, and he just takes that as fact. And he was giving her all those signals during their conversation. He was saying things like, you know, I just really want to work past this through you. Like, we have a really great connection. He made out with her. And I don't think that he made out with Genevieve during their one-on-one chit-chat. So I was kind of like, okay, he's giving her all the signals that he usually gives her. But then they go sit down and, you know, Clayton confronts Genevieve, and y'all... Tell me below in the comments what you thought of this little section, because I couldn't figure out if it was, like, scripted. I think it was either, like, the producers told Clayton to say this line, what I'm about to say, or Clayton was just so caught up in what Shanae said, but then once it came out of his mouth, he was like, oh, there's no way. Like, there's no way. So he sits down and he turns to Genevieve and he's like, are you an actress? Do you want to go home? That's just the corniest thing he's ever said. It's so corny. And immediately, he doesn't even give her a chance to respond. Immediately after he says that, he's like, I have to go. And that's why I think it was like either the producers like forced him to say that line and he said it, and then he got up and he's like, okay, I did it. I said it. I've had enough of Shanae's drama. Please let me eliminate this girl. Like, I'm so sick. Or he really was caught up in Shanae's lies at that point in time, and he was listening to what she was saying there in their chit-chat, and then he sits down and he's like, okay, you know, like, let me investigate what Shanae was telling me, da-da-da-da-da. He says, are you an actress? And then as soon as he hears those words coming out of his mouth, he was like, this is a load of BS. Like, this girl over here is feeding me lies, and I've fallen for it for the final time. So I couldn't really figure out which of the two. It could have been a mixture of the two. We don't really know. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts were about this little interaction here. So obviously, eventually, Shanae gets eliminated. And I had a lot of mixed feelings, surprisingly. Obviously, y'all, don't get me wrong, I was very excited about Shanae leaving. Obviously, I do not want her to take up any more of my time on the screen, any more of Clayton's time, any more of the girls' time, obviously. But it was, with Genevieve being on a date, it wasn't as satisfying as it could have been of an elimination, I think. Just because I don't feel like the stakes were high enough for Genevieve for me to be truly like, this is a victory. Like, we really got one over on her, just because, you know, Genevieve is not one of those girls who Clayton is super duper invested in. So it was more about like letting Shanae go as opposed to Genevieve winning, if that makes sense. And for me personally, like, I would have been like, I would have liked stakes on both sides. Like, I would have liked, obviously, Shanae to still go, but also, like, another girl that Clayton is super invested in. to be on this date, so we can really see him have to tackle and make a tough decision, because I do think that there was a part of Clayton that did like Shanae and did want to believe what she was telling him. He did want to be caught up in that fantasy with her. And Genevieve just didn't have that same, like, pull, I feel like. And on top of that, like, their connection, it just was super stiff and, like, super awkward afterward. Like, it just felt like he gave her the rose, like I'm saying, kind of, like, by default. And then they just get up and kind of shuffle over to some trees. And they're like, yes, now we are the only ones left. And now we will kiss in front of this tree. Like, it just felt very, like, stiff and just weird. On top of that, Genevieve, she didn't even get, like, a night portion. She didn't even get, like, a dinner date, which I felt like she was super robbed of. I don't know if anyone noticed that, because we just went straight into Teddi's date. We went straight into Croatia, so I feel like it was easily forgotten about. But, oh, girl, she really did. And that's why I feel like it wasn't about Genevieve. It wasn't about actually the other person on that date. It was really just about still the Shanae show, letting it have, like, giving Shanae the time to conclude her own storyline on The Bachelor, as opposed to, like, let's continue to watch Clayton form connections and fall in love. So that was just a little bit disappointing. I really don't feel any type of ways about Genevieve. I would have liked to have the opportunity to get to know her a little bit better on the dinner portion, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm super missing out on anything by not seeing that. So then after that, we have the cocktail party. It's pretty uneventful, but looking back, it did set the stage for a few of the later events that happened in the episode. So first of all, we catch up with Sarah and Clayton. They chit chat. I zoned out during this conversation. I'm just going to be honest. Sis sat down and was talking about, I just feel like I can see you in real life about 5 different times. Like, that's all I got from that conversation. She just said real life over and over and over again. And Clayton was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. So we put a pin in that. And then the other major event that happened during the cocktail party was, Mara, she tried to, give Clayton some poutine, which I guess is a traditional Canadian dish. And she was feeding it to him. They're having a good time. And then Serene comes in and pulls Clayton. They only got about, 3 minutes of time together. And so this is where we see the beginning of Mara start to spiral and feeling insecure about not getting that time with Clayton and thinking that it's contributing to her lack of or failure to receive an invitation for a one-on-one date. So both of these kind of events kind of set up or forecast some drama that happens in the later portion of the episode. And then we go straight into Croatia. We meet up with Teddi, who has one of those typical walking around the street type of dates. It's cute, it's fun, it's relaxed. I really like Teddi just as a person. I think she's super down to earth and relatable. She seems like someone you could have a good time with. I also love just how comfortable she seems to be in her own skin on TV. I love that she wears her natural hair. She doesn't do that much makeup. And this is not a dig to anyone who does do those things. I think, women can express themselves however they want. But it's something we don't see a lot of, and it's refreshing. I like that she just is that comfortable and confident with how she looks and isn't afraid, she's not going to change it just because she's on TV. So they're walking around, they've always had a cute, fun connection together. So they're just building on that as they're walking around the city. And then, of course, we go to the dinner date portion. We have another chit-chat. And this time, Teddi opens up to Clayton about her virginity and reveals to him that she is a virgin. And that initially in her life, she did feel pressure to remain a virgin until marriage because her mom is a teen mom and she doesn't want her daughter to kind of go down the same path that she did. And she wants her to be able to put that off for a later period of her life so she can kind of grow up and make more mature decisions before engaging in any type of sexual activity. And so Teddi kind of specifies for the first period of her life, she did give in to this pressure, but as she's grown up a little bit more and realized that she's in charge of her own life and she can make decisions for herself while still being responsible, she's decided that while she doesn't want to wait for marriage, she does want to wait until she's fallen in love. and she's never been in love before, so therefore she's never lost her virginity before. And this was a conversation where I felt like between the two of them, it had some ups and downs. Like, I was feeling it at some points, and other points I was like, ooh, like, okay. So let's get into it. So this conversation felt very similar to the conversation that Clayton had with Gabby at the one-on-one that they had last week. And if you didn't get a chance to watch my recap and breakdown of what I thought about Clayton's conversation with Gabby last week and why I feel that's so pivotal to his journey up until this point, it'll be linked in the cards above. So be sure to check that out. But essentially, the short version of the story is, I feel like in Clayton's conversation with Gabby was the first time that I saw him engage in a conversation. The first time I felt like he actually wanted to be there, and it was a back and forth as opposed to just like one person speaking and him listening. He was asking thoughtful questions. He was, giving thoughtful responses. Like, it really just felt like two people having a conversation and not one person speaking and one person listening. And that's exactly how I felt during this conversation with Teddi. Again, I felt like Clayton took that information in. And also, I think similar to Gabby, Teddi provided him with some information that was vulnerable. Like, it is vulnerable to open up about that part of yourself, but it wasn't something that outpaced the stage of their relationship, right? Like, it was something that, like, hey, we know each other, we've seen each other around, we've had a few conversations, so we do feel comfortable enough with each other to open up. But I'm not about to share, my deepest, darkest secret with you. I'm going to tell you something that is impactful for our relationship should we move forward, and that is on your need to know as a potential future partner. But it's on par with where we are and how we've developed our foundation for our relationship up until this point. So I feel like Teddi did a good job of actually picking what she did want to share with Clayton. And Clayton was receptive to that, and I felt like he did respond with good questions, asking her, like, if you've never been in love, how do you know what that feels like? If you've never been in love, how are you certain that you're preparing yourself to be vulnerable during this journey? I felt like those are very thoughtful questions, showed that he was listening, and showed that he cared about where Teddi was mentally on this journey and seeing what he could do to support her in that. Then, and y'all, let me know in the comments what you thought about this little comment right here. Scooting back a little bit, when Teddi first revealed this identity about herself, I guess, she said, I'm a virgin. Clayton's first reaction was to say, I would have never known. I would have never been able to tell. And it's just like, what does that mean? Like, what does that, like, that means nothing. That means nothing. And it's just, I've been saying this all along, like, I've kind of seen this pattern in Clayton. I feel like we have to take his background into account, right? Like, he used to be a football player at a huge state school. He probably has had no trouble getting girls before. And typically guys who are in that position don't have to work that hard, and they can rely on those old cliches that don't actually mean anything, that don't actually progress the relationship along. So I feel like that's exactly what he was leaning into with that statement. He was like, I would have never known. Like, for me, it was a call back to when he had his first one-on-one with Rachel, and he was like, why are you single? Like, there's a much better way to ask that question to get to the heart of what someone's dating history has been like, what they're looking for in their next relationship, what hasn't been working out in their previous relationships. Like, there's so many other ways to ask that question that allow you to get to know that person in a really substantial way. Same with this, I would have never known. Like, what does a virgin look like? And what is Teddi doing? How is she presenting herself to not look like what a virgin looks like? And is this a positive or negative connotation in association with the word virginity? Like, it honestly says more about the person saying that sentence and saying that line as opposed to however you think the person who has this identity is or is not expressing themselves. So to me, it was just an unnecessary statement that did nothing to advance the conversation or the relationship. And I really hope that Clayton stops relying on these old cliche lines, but I don't have much faith that that'll happen. Either way, that, like I said, that was the first thing that he said. And then after that, he did engage in more thoughtful questions. And so I feel like he turned the conversation around. They, had a smooth little chit chat. She got a rose at the end, whatever. So we're cool on Teddi. We're cool on Clayton. But it was just something that gave me pause. Then we go into a group date. It's your classic, typical, night, Viking, obstacle, duel, battle, extravaganza, whatever. It was kind of cute watching it. It's obviously been done before, whatever. I felt very neutral watching it. I felt as though it didn't necessarily do anything to advance any of the relationships of the girls who were on the date, but it also didn't bring about any drama, and it didn't do anything to hurt the relationships of the girls. So, take it or leave it. Whatever. Then, we go into the after party. And y'all, Clayton, okay, he has been making some progress. I have to give him credit where credit is due. He's been making some progress on his outfits, okay, this episode and the past episode. I haven't seen the hoodie and the blazer, so I have to, give him his props for that. But my man said, hold my beer. He said, I got something for y'all. And then he rolled out in a quarter zip and a blazer. I thought it couldn't get any worse. I don't know who this man's stylist is. I want to know if he is a stylist or if this is a personal choice. I don't know which is worse. I really don't know, but I have questions and they need to be answered because I cannot look at this any further. I'm going to highlight some of the relationships that did advance on and after this group date before getting into the big meat of the drama that kind of took up the rest of the episode. So Clayton has a little chit chat with Rachel at the after party, and he actually asked her. He says, hometowns are around the corner. How are we feeling? Do we feel comfortable to bring me home to meet your family? Thoughts. And I actually thought that was pretty cool. You don't often see the lead initiating that conversation and bringing that up. It's usually more of the contestant being like, hey, I really like you. I'd love to introduce you to mom. What are we thinking? So I thought that was obviously a great sign. If I were in Rachel's shoes, I would feel very validated and very comforted in knowing that, Clayton is probably on the same page as she is in their feelings, and that he is kind of stepping outside of himself a little bit to pursue her as much as he can in a show like this. So I really appreciated that gesture. And of course, Rachel was super happy and excited about it. She said she was 100% ready. And she also was the first person to say that she was falling in love with Clayton. No surprise there. Obviously, we can see that they have a really great connection. They're really feeling each other. And I'm happy for them. Clayton and Rachel, they're not two people that independently on my own are super compelling. But I like them for each other. I think they look good together. I think their vibe works together. So I'm rooting for this relationship, and I hope that it can live up to its full potential, whatever that is. So that was one little, chit-chat that happened. And then speeding ahead to the end of the date, Clayton gets home. He gets a note that says, meet me at the clock tower. And he goes out to this location, and Susie pulls up. And y'all, this is the happiest. This is the most excited I've ever seen Clayton the entire show. I've never seen him, smile so big. He was moving around. He was so excited. Usually he's a very, even-keeled guy. He's pleasant. He gives off a very pleasant, happy to be here, happy to be alive type of vibe. But it's not excited. It's not happy. It's just yeah, I'm here. We're making things happen. But when Susie pulled up, he was like, let's go. Tell me what we're doing. What's going on? I'm so happy to see you. It felt like he was pumping up. It felt like he was a team captain back in his football days, pumping up the squad, getting ready for a good play. I don't know. But he really just channeled really excited energy that I had just never seen. I did not know it was in him. But part of me was kind of wondering if it was based off of more of Susie, of I'm so excited to see this person in particular, or if it was just the adrenaline of the spontaneity of the activity of this mysterious secret late night meetup at this secret undisclosed location, who am I meeting? Just all the adrenaline and all the buildup of seeing this person was super exciting to him. I don't know which one it was. I do think that he genuinely likes Susie. But just his his excitement to me, just like in the back of my mind, seemed a little misplaced. It seemed a little, because just what he was saying about it, he was like, his words were like, tell me what we're doing. Tell me what's going on. Like, he seemed excited about the activity, the spontaneity of the meet and greet, as opposed to like, I'm so happy to see you, Susie. I love that we're getting more time after this, like, after party or whatever. Like, you know, just those little minute differences in details between how he was speaking about the situation. And it could have just been like, those are the words that came to his mind first. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But that's just what my gut was telling me when I was watching it. Which I don't think, like, necessarily bodes poorly for their relationship. Because, like I said, she obviously likes him. He likes her. But she's not Rachel. At the end of the day, that's what I'm getting at. She's not Rachel. But Susie does, you know, pull him up and say that she's the second person to say that she's also falling for him, falling in love with him. And he's excited. He's receptive to hear this news as well. So their relationship, I could easily see Rachel and Susie being final two, with Gabby potentially maybe scooting her way into final three, ? I could see Teddi being final four, but I haven't seen her in too many of the other previews, so like I don't really know. Also maybe Serene, because I feel like we've seen a preview of Serene at another one-on-one. I'm not good at this type of predicting stuff. I just like to watch it just to see what's going on. So, you know, I'm just speaking. But I honestly could see Susie and Rachel being final two. So then we go back a little bit, right, to the after party. And Mare pulls up to Clayton and she just kind of unloads on him. Like, she obviously has been in her feelings, in her head all week. And she decides to let it out. She decides to get everything off her chest with Clayton. She brings up two main grievances to him. Number one, she's upset. She's feeling a little neglected. She doesn't use those words, but that's the emotion that she's conveying. She's upset that she hasn't gotten a one-on-one. She's feeling a little bit unseen. She's not sure where they stand in their connection. And on top of that, it's one thing for other girls, for him to be continuously exploring relationships with other girls and, like, giving other girls one-on-ones, but she's really triggered by the fact that he's giving this specific person a repeat one-on-one. She doesn't say that, but it's obviously true. She's triggered by that. And she does say to Clayton that she doesn't feel as though the girls he's giving one-on-ones to deserve it, that they're there for the right reasons, that they're ready to be a wife. And she goes so far as to say that the girls she's speaking on have said as much, that they're not ready to be engaged. They're not sure if they can fully see themselves being engaged at the end of all this journey. So Clayton, out of nowhere, uses his critical thinking, deductive reasoning skills that have apparently been missing for 6 weeks now, and says, I've got it. I'm going to narrow it down to Sarah. So, unclear why we couldn't have used these problem-solving skills in the episodes leading up to this, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, Clayton says, haha, this is Sarah, and he gets really in his head, and we'll get into all that later. But I just kind of want to unpack what Mara is actually saying here, right? Because in saying that she feels like the other girls are not ready for marriage, not ready to be a wife, at the same time she's pulling herself up in order to push these girls down and being like, they're not ready to be a wife, but I am. And her only criteria for saying that seems to be the age thing. For me, it's not giving what she thinks is giving. Like, it's really not hitting. Just because I'm not about to sit up here and be ageist and, like, call her a cougar or, you know, put her down for being one of the oldest members in the cast. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. That's none of my business. You know, she's here. It is what it is. Like, she's just as ready to date as anyone else. And that's the point. She doesn't want anyone else to come for her about her age. So I don't know why she thinks it's appropriate when she comes for someone else about their age just because they're younger. You know? And it's just kind of like, it's very hypocritical. On top of that, her whole thing is she's like, I wasn't ready to get married at 23. Like, I was way too young then. Like, the operative word there, Mara, is I. You were not ready to get married at 23. That has absolutely zero things to do with Sarah or anyone else involved in life at all, ever. Like, that's you. You were not ready to get married at 23, and okay. That's what it is. Okay, that's fine. People are different. I personally would not get married young. Again, that's me. Like, that's a personal choice, and people mature at different ages, and age is not a predictor of maturity necessarily past a certain age, obviously. But as we're entering our 20s and beyond, age is not necessarily the only predictor of maturity. Of course, it's a factor, but it should not be the only criteria and determinant of if someone is mature. I mean, let's take a look back and look at some of the Bachelor in Paradise couples, right? Like, Serena and Joe, I have full faith in them as a couple. Serena is like 23, 24. Looking at her, watching how she carried herself on Matt's season, on Paradise, I feel confident in her decision to be engaged. I feel as though she does seem ready for marriage. She seems mature enough. She seems as though she's figured out herself enough to be open and ready for a partner at that level. But then we have a couple over here like Mari and Kenny. Kenny over here is 40 years old. That is my least favorite couple to come out of Paradise this summer. Like, looking at Kenny, he does not show someone who is ready enough to be open to a partner at that stage in their life. That is not the behavior that I saw from him on Paradise this summer. And those are two drastically different ages, and therefore age cannot be the only criteria and the only determining factor in determining if someone is ready for marriage. Like, it's just simply not enough information or evidence. But the most annoying thing is, and I think Sarah hit this right on the head, and I was super happy when she did, is that none of this even matters, because this is not the real issue. Like, this is just the cover-up issue of Mara feeling insecure in her own relationship and projecting that insecurity onto someone else, someone who is an easy target. And I'm so glad that Sarah, while she was affected by this confrontation at the dinner table and, she broke down in tears, she was trying to defend herself, whatever, she still saw through it. She still was like, hey, someone is coming after me for something that I cannot control, something that is not their business, and something that is not true. Like, all these factors just scream insecurity, and I'm so glad she saw right through that. Because while I personally am not the biggest fan of Sarah, it's a personal problem. I'm not the biggest fan of her because I think she's boring. She does not interest me. I'm not interested. I'm not invested in her personality or her love story. Like, she doesn't move me. But like I said, that's a personal problem. She hasn't done anything wrong. So it's not that I'm like, oh, like, I don't like her, I think she should go home. It's just like, she just doesn't move me. Like, we just don't vibe. And like, that's fine. Like, whatever. So I don't think that she deserves to be sabotaged for that reason. And that's super annoying because it's the same thing. It's the same thing as what Shanae was doing, right? Like, Mara is feeling insecure about her relationship, so she finds someone who she can make a target and build up this huge case file in her head and then use all that evidence that she herself created to tear that person down. Because that whole thing with Elizabeth happened because she sat next to Clayton at a group date. This whole thing with Sarah is happening because she's getting the second one-on-one. Because I feel like if it wasn't Sarah, it would be Serene, because she's the one that took Clayton away when Mara was trying to give him the poutine. She's the one that won the group date. So I just feel like it's whoever is the most easily identifiable target and whoever, the person can come up with the quickest evidence against. Which is super frustrating. I hope I did not have to eat these words because the way they're editing these next few previews, I don't want her to create a villain edit for herself. So I really hope I don't have to eat these words because, like I said, even though I'm personally not super invested in her, that doesn't mean that I just want her journey to end. Like, I think she fully deserves to explore the full extent of her relationship with Clayton and really see where it's going. Like, I would feel perfectly fine if she was in the Final Four. Like, that would not make me feel any type of way at all. So I really hope that she's able to keep her head above the water and not, get really vindictive and fueled by this petty drama. And I hope Mare does not succeed in taking her down, because just like Shanae, at the end of the day, she's not a top contender for Clayton. Like, yeah, she might take some girls out, but she's also going to be on her way out. So, I don't have a conclusion for that rant. We'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. So those are pretty much all of my thoughts. This was actually a relatively, uneventful episode. So thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in. And I'll see you right back here next week for another episode of Brianna's Bachelor Breakdown.